I'm Mark Mueller. This is Truth and Justice League podcast, and my special guest today is Dr. Joe Varon.
Hi, thank you for the invite.
We're lucky today to have Dr. Varon, who is a practicing doctor who does more medical care than just about anybody I've ever heard of, and who also has published 1,000 articles now in the medical science.
Yes, sir.
And teaches at medical schools, triple board certified, head of departments, about as qualified a doctor as you can get. And I know you wouldn't probably say that yourself, but I'll say that.
Thank you.
Why did you get into medicine?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. So on my last year of high school in Mexico, I went to one of these psychologists that tells you what you're good at. So the psychologist called my dad and says, hey, Mr. Varon, I'm not going to charge you. And my dad says, why? Well, because I cannot tell you what your son is good at because he scored good on everything. So I asked the lady, I said, what do I do? I need to find a career. And when you're in Mexico, you have to choose either chemical biologicals, math, social sciences, or stuff like that. She says, why don't you go into chemical biologicals because it's the most difficult one and you seem to like challenges. So I said, okay, I'm going to go into that. The last day of my high school, and in Mexico, you go from high school straight to the university. On the last day of my high school, I'm sitting at the graduation ceremony with my best friend and his father is a doctor. And he tells me, Joe, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I mean, all my friends knew what they wanted to do. He tells me, why don't you become a doctor? I said, sounds like a great idea. And that's how I became a doctor. I'm for real. Now, if you ask me today what I would do different, I would do everything absolutely the same way. I would not change my career as a doctor for anything, despite the ups and downs, the pandemics, the Texas Medical Board visits, whatever. I would do the same thing.
What is your greatest satisfaction about being a doctor to date?
Now, if I had a person that asked me, do I become a doctor today? I would tell them don't. Because becoming a doctor today, you basically become a corporate puppet. You become a person that follows orders and doesn't use your brain. The vast majority. Of course, there are exceptions, but I would tell you the vast majority of people out there are people that are not using their brains for what we're supposed to help patients. They are just following recipes. They are just following protocols. And protocols that may not all be that good. And we saw it in the pandemic. The pandemic was a classic example. And it's one of the reasons why many of us woke up, what I call the big awakening.
Well, tell me about that. I know I met you just prior to the pandemic, or at least got introduced to you just prior to the pandemic in 2019. And the next thing I knew, the pandemic was happening, and you were in Houston, and you were front and center in taking care of all kinds of patients. You've even written a book about that, at least one book. What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, it's one of those experiences that I think I was born for this. Because, I had the critical care skills because I'm a critical care doctor. I had the administrative skills because I had directed a bunch of institutions. And now I have an illness that nobody knew how to treat. There was no idea how to treat it. We were being told that some things worked, some other things didn't work. And that was probably the best experience of my life. I mean, I know that people say, hey, you are crazy. But I'm crazy to the point that I worked 715 continuous days without a single day off. I was the only doctor in my unit because nobody wanted to go to the COVID unit. I was fortunate enough to be working at a small community hospital in the north part of Houston that took care of a lot of indigent people. And the CEO of the hospital told me, Joe, you do whatever you have to do. So I turned the entire hospital into a giant ICU. Every bed was ICU capable and worked like crazy. So it was a very interesting period of time. We try things. A lot of what we do in medicine is trial and error. So we tried a lot of different things to save people's lives. And at the end of the day, we came up with I'm going to call it formula of what worked. With that formula, my mortality rate was 4%. The rest of the country was between 25 and 40%. But this particular formula included agents that are repurposed agents that many of my colleagues says, no, this is wrong. You are using, things that you shouldn't be using. For example, Ivermectin.
So you initially, you repurposed the whole hospital into basically a COVID intensive care unit?
Correct.
And developed your own protocols over the time you were there to what worked for your patients.
That is correct. I did it. But I did it with the help of some of my associates that were not working with me in the hospital, Dr. Paul Marik, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Umberto Meduri. We were all working. You should see the Zooms that we used to have at 2 o'clock in the morning coming up with, hey, this didn't work on this patient. What shall we try? And that's how that's how medicine is. You try things, you see if they work, and then you go for it. And when we saw that things started to work, we started telling to the world that what we were doing was working. And contrary to what you would expect, that everybody would welcome you with open arms, doors started to shut down. People started to say that we were crazy, that we were using a medication that was meant for horses only, which was not true. And you remember the whole politics. We got censored. I couldn't put the word Ivermectin anywhere on a Facebook post, because if not, I would go on Facebook jail for a month. It was very painful, to be honest with you. After us were the only people actually working and taking care of people. And particularly in my case, I was taking care of the poorest, the segregated people from really poor parts of the Houston metropolitan area. But when people started to hear of our success, we started to get the private jets coming out. People coming from all over the country, coming from the big institutions, from the big academic institutions, being flown over to us because they knew that what we were doing was working.
You mentioned something about being censored on Facebook. And this is kind of a hot topic, but we now know that there was censorship ordered not just on doctors, but on groups of patients that were trying to communicate with each other about their potential injuries to vaccines and things like that. And recently, the lady that was the director of YouTube admitted that they took down 1 million videos on YouTube that had anything to do with something that was not the preferred narrative of either COVID or the vaccinations. And that, to me, was I didn't realize it was that extensive at the time, but that's huge. You're seeing one side of one coin.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it hit. What hurt me the most is that my colleagues, my professional colleagues, people that I've known for 20, 30 years, they were following that narrative, the narrative that you are talking about. When they heard safe and effective, they said it's safe and effective. They never questioned it. And so that and in all fairness, for example, in relation to vaccines, I started vaccinating people at the very beginning of the vaccine rollout because people were dying in front of me. So, I hear from Dr. Fauci, this is fair, this is safe and effective. I said, he must know. The guy is well known. I didn't know that he was going to change his mind 20 times on other things. And I didn't know that what he was telling me was a perfect lie. Because within weeks, I started to realize, look, even the patients that got vaccinated are coming into the hospital. Actually, sometimes even worse. And then within a period of months, I started to see a number of cases of patients that were having vaccine-related injuries. And to what degree that vaccine-related injury increased, that today, more than 50% of patients that come to my office have some degree of vaccine-related injury. Something that, if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would tell you, oh, that's not possible. That's a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm. What are your specialties?
I am board certified in internal medicine, board certified in pulmonary medicine, I'm board certified in critical care medicine. I have added qualifications in geriatrics, emergency medicine, and sleep disorder. So I have 6 specialties, basically. So I tell people that I'm basically a general practitioner with a bunch of diplomas.
Well, and you know, directly relevant to the COVID era was that initially this was highlighted as a respiratory pulmonary issue, right? So that's right up your field.
Right, but immediately as soon as I started to have the first set of patients, I started to see that these patients were behaving very rarely, very unusual. So these patients come in with respiratory infections, and then suddenly you start looking at their immune system, and their immune system is non-existent. So I start checking in these patients levels of the CD4 counts, which is the counts that we used to use for patients with HIV to see how immunosuppressed they were. To my surprise, most of these patients had a very low CD4 count. So at the time, I called my good friend, Professor Luc Montagnier. And Luc, as you know, he's the one that discovered the HIV virus and won the Nobel Prize in 2008. And I had the opportunity to go with him to pick up such prize with Miss Barbara Rasnowski, which you know
and
quite
Nadia.
well,
Nadia.
and Nadia.
Yeah.
And so I called Luc and I said, "Hey, look at what I'm seeing." And Luc asked me, "Can you please send me a sample?" So I sent him a sample of one of the patients. And 2 weeks later, Luc calls me, and he's like literally freaking out. He says, "Joe, this is not possible." I said, "What do you mean this is not possible?" He says, "Well, normally every virus has I'm going to call it genomic signature. So it has a series of letters that go in a sequence. Well, in this particular sequence, there were 4 areas where the sequence was out of order. And instead of the normal letter that would follow, there were other I'm going to call other proteins that shouldn't be there. Proteins that belong to the HIV virus." So this is, and I'm telling you, this is around April of 2020. So at that point in time, Luc confirms with me that this is a man-made virus. Somebody actually had to insert those things on that genomic structure. Of course, you go and try to tell these things out to the public, and they look at you like you're some kind of a conspiracy theory lunatic.
What's going on? So Dr. Montagnier died recently, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so he's the guy that won the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. So
yes, he was a brilliant man. I mean, I learned a lot from that man.
Tell me about Independent Medical Alliance.
So the Independent Medical Alliance is an organization that is the former FLCCC, the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance. And it was an alliance that was basically 5 friends, like I was telling you, in the middle of the night, calling each other, "What do you do?" We started to produce protocols that made a difference in patients. The early treatment of COVID, we saw that it was helping. So we decided to incorporate into something that we could spread out. And we started to tell people, "Hey, what we're doing is working." Now that the mainstream media does not want to follow what we say, they are happy with their advertisements from Big Pharma. We went ahead and did it ourselves. So we created a 501c3 corporation, and very rapidly, we went from nothing to having thousands and thousands of healthcare providers being part of what we do, and millions of followers. We translated our protocols to multiple languages. At some point in time, we had 23 different languages. So if you wanted to know something about COVID, you could go in and you could pull out our name, and you would, whenever we were not censored, and you could find us online, you could do that. But we started to work around the censorship. We got our new servers that could not be touched or brought down by anybody else. We started to have weekly webinars, and we did that, and to date, we continue to do weekly webinars. Sometime last year, we have realized that during all this eye-opening of COVID, we realized that the whole medical system is messed up. The whole medical system, not at one level, but on a lot of levels. And we decided to rebrand our corporation as something that would not just be COVID related, because we were doing other things. We were looking at cancer, we were looking at depression, obesity, just name it, a lot of other things, and we were providing things. So we rebranded ourselves as an independent medical alliance. The Independent Medical Alliance has two arms. The arm that is science, where we are constantly developing protocols, studies, reviewing the literature, doing whatever we have to do. And it has the second part, which is the advocacy part. We even have a political arm nowadays, just so that we can at least try to have a seat at the table of the administration, and hopefully we can move the needle a little bit towards a more central position.
How many healthcare providers are involved with your group now?
The group has more than 12,000 healthcare providers, and we have more than 1 million followers.
Wow. So what would you like to see as an outcome from your movement?
Look, I'm getting old. We are all getting old. I want the future generations to open their eyes. Unfortunately, right now, they are machines. They are machines, and now with the AI, it's even worse. You ask them a question, and they chat GPT it, and that's it. What I would like to empower patients to ask the right questions to their doctors, and I would like doctors to go back to the principles. The principle of do no harm. That's the number one principle, the principle that we swear by every time we say our Hippocratic oath, which is not happening. I would like to see more independent medical practices. Instead of this institutionalized, you have to follow the recipe of how you do this. That's what I would like. I know it's very difficult. But even if I can make a little change, I know that we're going to save a lot of lives.
Well, I see doctors, a lot of doctors, they want to do the right thing. They don't know what it is.
And that's a little bit of soul searching. And you have to, in order to do the things that I do, you have to believe in them. But it's not just that somebody's going to brainwash you. Look at the data. The data that we have. For example, the other day we were talking about photobiomodulation, the use of near-infrared light. There are 7,000 papers out there on this particular therapy that has been used for 1 million things, and it's used. And instead of people being sent for photobiomodulation therapy or red light therapy, they get given pills. That's the part where I tell you we need to educate also our patients. We need to make sure that patients understand that disease is no longer normal. Stop thinking that disease is normal. If you go to Victoria's Secrets today, what do you see? You see a giant mannequin outside, because obesity is quote-unquote normal. It's not normal. Obesity is an illness that can be prevented, that you don't need to use semaglutide or Ozempic or any of those things for that. But that requires education. So we need to change this culture that tells you, hey, if you have high blood pressure, just go to your doctor. They'll give you a pill and the blood pressure will come down. I need to teach you what you need to do to keep your blood pressure down without medications, ideally.
Well, how do we do that?
You're
talking some pretty big projects.
Yeah,
here,
well,
right?
The basic answer for you is very easy. Education, education, education. And there are ways to do this. I have come up with a lot of crazy ideas that may work. If you are watching TV at night, you are bombarded with advertisements from the pharmaceutical companies. Well, I do believe that they need to become out, but I also know that, they pay money and it makes the industry grow. What I would tell the pharmaceutical industry is, for every advertisement that you are putting on medication X, you have to put an advertisement as to how to prevent the illness that is required for that. That would be one of the things that I would do. So that there is a balance. Now there is absolutely no balance. I have patients that come to me asking for medications that is not even pertinent to them, that they just decide that they like it because, the advertisement is so cute.
Well, the other thing that I'm seeing with advertisements is they're done so that they start getting people looking for disease in themselves. So they'll say, do you have this? 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 People start thinking about things. Then they start worrying about things. Then they start obsessing about things, and then they got to go get some treatment because they're sure they're going to die.
And we see that every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And unfortunately, those who truly suffer because they have real disease, they are pushed aside because all these other people are consuming their sources or resources.
Let's talk about, I know your daughter is Eastern Medical
Yes, sir.
doctor. I have not met her, but to what level are there other types of non-standard allopathic medicine treatments that should be considered by doctors?
I mean, my daughter, as you know, she is a traditional acupuncture and oriental medicine physician. She actually trained here in Austin
Right.
at AOMA, and she's one of our fellows at the Independent Medical Alliance. My practice uses her services in probably about 40% of the patients because I have realized that things that she does work. Now, when we sit on the table and she's trying to explain to me how things work, there is a big disconnect because I'm, molecular biology kind of thing, and she talks to me about meridians and some other things. So I don't understand that language, but it works. 11 years ago, I had a stroke, a posterior circulation stroke. They told me I would never be able to walk again, that I was going to, need a walker or whatever. And I said, not happening. So I went and started to do some of these alternative techniques. One of them was acupuncture. And, I play racquetball now every day. It's at 6 weeks after the stroke, I was already doing these things. I think that I opened my eyes to the Eastern medicine at that point in time. But during COVID, I started to realize so many things that you could do. I was having patients come in, let's say after the vaccine, that would come with a facial paralysis. And what we do in my world is you put them on an antiviral, you give them cortisone, and you hope for the best. So I would give those patients to my daughter. She would do her acupuncture thingy, and within 2 weeks, the face would be back in the right place. How does it work? I cannot explain it. And I'm not even trying to. I just have understood that there are things that have been done for thousands of years that make a difference. And it's silly that they are very inexpensive. They are relatively easy to do by a professional that knows what he's doing. And the biggest question is, how do you incorporate them into your practice? I would like, as part of my big goal of what do I see in the future, I would love every practice in the United States to have some degree of, I'm going to calling it alternate therapy. I'm not even sure that we should call it alternate therapy because they are the original therapy. We're probably the ones that are doing the alternate part with what we do. But I would like to see a combination of Eastern and Western medicine.
Do you see, you mentioned some stuff about red light therapy. And I'm hearing a lot that one of the major directions that medicine will be going into is sound and light healing. Do you have any of those aspects that you're working with in your own practice?
We're starting to work with we've been working with the near infrared light for several years now, and it works really, really good. We have a few people that have done some of the sound related therapy, but I'm still waiting for substantial data that I can measure. Before I make a recommendation regarding any therapy, I like to look at data. And I'm not talking about the randomized placebo-controlled trials, which, they're all a problem. I'm talking about simple cases where you can see a true difference that happens in patients. And I have seen some amazing, amazing results. People that are doing near-infrared light for a variety of different things. People that have the chronic ringing in the ear. You put the little near-infrared light close to their ears twice a day for 15 minutes, and the ringing in the ear goes down. People that have migraines forever, you put them in one of these helmets for near-infrared light once a day, migraines are gone. So there is a lot that we don't know that has been used and that we can incorporate into our practices.
Have you ever yourself ever experienced hyperbaric oxygen treatment?
Yeah, well, I have for a variety of reasons. One of them was for a bunch of experiments that we were doing. But I actually, believe it or not, I'm in the process of buying a hyperbaric oxygen chamber for my own home. I think that the advantages of this compressed oxygen getting into some of your tissues will help a lot in areas like inflammation, brain fog. Maybe not like Michael Jackson that was using it for rejuvenating, but I think that it will give you a little bit of better mental clarity. A lot of my patients that do have long COVID or vaccine-related injury undergo hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatments, and they swear by them. They can tell you big difference before the hyperbarics and after hyperbarics.
How many people are you seeing now? You said half your population has some degree of vaccine injury. But how do you differentiate between vaccine injury or a long COVID injury?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. Most of the time, I can tell that on the basis of timing. When people tell me I was perfectly healthy, I didn't have any issues whatsoever, then I get the shot, and then 2 weeks later, all hell starts breaking loose, I say that it's timing. There are ways from a research standpoint where you can actually measure the spike protein and even see if the spike protein that you are measuring is the one that comes from the vaccine or the one that comes from the virus itself, but they are not commercially available in the US. So we're in the process of working on that. But I think that the number one thing, and this is a discussion that I've had with Dr. Peter Hotez, which I'm sure you know.
I know who he is.
Yeah. So Peter and I, we've had our discussions, and Peter has asked me, how do you know that this is COVID vaccine? Well, it's very simple, you give the patient the vaccine, and then the patient has a problem. Before the vaccine, the patient has no problem. Now, we can also look at the spike protein antibodies. The spike protein antibodies, they tend to follow a linear increase in vaccination. And we have levels. For example, if I have somebody that has 1,000, 2,000, it's probably somebody that got an infection with COVID. If I had somebody that has 5,000, maybe had an infection with COVID plus the vaccine. But the patients that I'm seeing have more than 25,000 for antibodies. And the only thing that explains that is COVID vaccination. And that has been one of the ways how we have been dealing with this. Now, from a treatment standpoint, the treatment for whether long COVID or vaccine-related injury is the same thing. Just get rid of any extra spike protein that you have in your body. And there are a variety of ways. The IMA has developed protocols that, we have them free to the public to look online without any problem at imahealth.org. And and they work. I mean, you have no idea how, one of the most satisfying things, I remember that before I used to be very excited when somebody had a cardiac arrest and, we brought them back. Now when you have somebody that has had long COVID or vaccine-related injury and we start them on one of these treatment protocols and then they call you, let's say 2 months later, and they say, you changed my life. That's one of the most gratifying things that we can have as doctors.
Well, that's one of the things. Regardless of, there's a couple of questions here. One is, how did we get in this mess? And we've talked a little bit about that. That's important to know so we don't do it again, and that appropriate steps can be taken to sanction the people that did contribute to that problem if that's what happened.
We got into this mess because there was no uniform agreement on what was going on. You would hear President Trump say one thing, then Dr. Fauci would come out and say something completely opposite to what Trump said and then change his mind 3 times. The WHO would say one thing, CDC would say another thing, I would come out on TV and say something else. People didn't know who to trust. And trust in medicine went down. And while trust in medicine went down, interestingly enough, pharmaceutical income went up. And then, we were told that if we stayed in our homes, nothing was going to happen, which was a complete lie that Dr. Fauci said. We were told that if you were 6 feet apart, you wouldn't get the virus because the virus is so smart that only at 6 feet, if it's 6 feet and 1 inch, no, sorry, it doesn't go there. I mean, we were told so many things, and we have this massive hysteria. Dr. Paul Marik says that the world lost its mind at the time. Now, what can we do to prevent this from happening again? Well, one more time, education, education, education. Get people to take control of their bodies. And what do I mean by control of their bodies? Have a good immune system. Vitamin C, vitamin D. I mean, most of the patients that we saw with COVID that died had very low levels of vitamin D. We discovered that very early in the pandemic. We found out that if your vitamin D3 level was below 20, your chances of leaving the hospital were very low. So how difficult is it to go outside in the mornings and, walk for 10 minutes under the sun? Simple things. I'm not telling you, go ahead and use this expensive drug that costs, $100,000. It's go out on the sun, take your vitamin D supplements, vitamin C. Isn't that what your grandma used to tell you? When every time you got sick, have your vitamin C, your lemon and your honey and stuff like that? Well, I think we need to go back to that. But we're not going back to that because we were not taught that. There has been a censorship on doing those things. And the censorship dates back to the 1930s when the Rockefeller family, if you remember, they decided to assign a guy to go and look at which schools were showing herbal medicine of the medical schools. And he came up with what it's called the Flexner Report. And on the Flexner Report, he says, this school has 2 hours of herbal medicine or whatever. Well, the Rockefeller family says, any school that has any of these things, we are not going to help them with any financial support. And in that moment, we lost all the control of what good, inexpensive medicine occurred. So those are the things that, this is a fight that didn't start 5 years ago when I opened my eyes. Yeah. This is a fight that is 100 years in the making.
It really sounds to me like this needs to start a lot earlier than adulthood. Kids need to be taught how to stay healthy.
Absolutely. I mean, and remember, kids need to follow examples. If they see me that I don't take care of myself, I don't exercise, I am eating junk, my kids are expected to do the same thing. And I'm not telling you that they don't deserve from time to time to, do the McDonald's or do the donuts or stuff like that. But every day, that's where we have problems. And again, that's a part of education where we need to change that. We need to have that cultural shift.
Yeah, I agree. Big cultural shift, and starts everywhere. And so I think people need to be talking about it and reading the right stuff about it. But let's talk about spike proteins for a second, because this is the fascinating topic. People don't know really what that means. They don't know what it does in the body, and they don't know how to get it out.
So let me explain it in the simplest way. The spike protein, if you guys remember, the COVID bug was a little round structure that had some little spikes.
Right.
Normally, when you get the COVID infection, the little ball dies and the spikes disappear, or they get close to your immune system and you develop an immune response. Unfortunately, the way we decided to control this pandemic was by injecting the spike protein into the body. And we thought that, it would just elicit a little immune response and it would go away. Unfortunately, 1 out of every 800 people that got the vaccine, that doesn't happen. And that spike protein goes into your system and starts producing more spike protein. There are a couple of really cool studies. There's a study that was done in Japan where they created this mouse that is kind of transparent, and they injected the mouse in the arm, in the paw, whatever you call that, with the vaccine, and they kind of painted the vaccine in red, so they would know which way the spike protein would go to. Well, within 48 hours, the mice was completely red. So this is a molecule that goes all over the place, and just as a spike, not only floats around your system, but it can go inside the cell. If it goes inside the cell, it can take control of the cell. It can tell the cell, hey, start producing this or start producing more spike or things like that. How do you get rid of it? Well, the way I tell people, the way I get rid of it on my patients is two ways. First, how do you take care of the floating spike? And for that, we use a well-known compound, Ivermectin, which to some extent decreases inflammation, binds to this agent. We use another agent that's called nattokinase, and what nattokinase does, it kind of breaks that spike protein into little pieces, which is nice. We add vitamin C, and we add vitamin D. And that, for most patients, does the trick. Now, you're going to say, well, that takes care of the circulating spike protein. What about the spike protein that is inside the cell? Well, for that, we use something that is even older than all these herbal medications. What we do is we use intermittent fasting. Your body is the smartest thing on earth. When your body doesn't get enough food for a period of time, your body starts chewing up the cells that are either infected, cancerous, or old. So if you want to start feeling younger, you can start doing intermittent fasting. So what we do with my patients, in my practice, I tell them 4 days a week, during 18 hours each one of those 4 days, you're not going to eat anything. You're going to drink whatever you want to drink that doesn't have sugar. And then the other 6 hours, you can eat whatever you want. And it works like a charm. It works like a charm. So intermittent fasting for the spike protein inside the cell, and the cocktail that we call I Recover Protocol, which also you can find in our website, for the circulating spike protein.
How do you know you have a spike problem?
I would say, that's even a better thing. So if you've had COVID or if you had the shot and you're having any symptom, go and talk to your healthcare provider, because it can be spike protein disease. You have no idea of what I have seen. Last week, I saw an 18-year-old kid with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's, the one that you see in old people.
Oh, yeah.
And 2 weeks after he had his shot, you can have heart problems. You can have joint problems. I'm seeing more rheumatological illnesses that I have ever seen in my life. And what happens is that this COVID and this spike protein per se messes up your immune system. So we are now also seeing infections that we were not seeing for a long period of time. The number of tuberculosis and weird illnesses is going up. Why? Because we kind of promoted that this vaccine would mess up your immune system. So you can imagine how bad I personally feel of all those patients that I told them at the very beginning of this that they needed to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I mean, I was misled. And up until today, people continue to be misled. You go to the pharmacy for whatever reason, and they offer you a COVID shot because they get $90 from the government to get the COVID shot into you.
Well, as usual, the taxpayer's paying for it. And I've also seen where a flood of these things come in from pharmacy chains, from drug companies, and it's like it's you don't want to wait till you're sick. Get your shots now. Get the COVID shot. Get the flu shot, and just go to your pharmacy. So you can just and who's paying for that?
Yeah, and it's all about the money and the fact that they tell you that it doesn't cost you, quote unquote. Watch out, because it may be costing you your life. I mean, the number of sudden cardiac deaths that we're seeing is unreal. I mean, there is no day that you don't open the news and some young person just dropped dead.
I've never seen that before, and I'm just seeing it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's
1 second.
That's okay. We like to have company in the podcast, and I'm a dog lover, so that's okay. Now, watch out with your dogs, because they're injecting mRNA vaccines on the dogs as well. So,
I've heard that,
and that's going to be a problem, because whether or not you believe in the concept of shedding, which means that you're going to be, putting it from one human to another human, there may be a lot of shedding from dogs and cats to humans.
Tell what's shedding and what's that?
I mean, shedding.
This is controversial. It's confusing.
Shedding is very controversial. I even have my own doubts about it. But I have patients that swear by it, that they never got COVID, they never had anything whatsoever, and then they were in close contact with somebody. Usually it's intimate contact. It's not,
Right.
It's not like you just shook the hand of somebody. But there are a lot of people that truly believe that you can get that spike protein through the skin to somebody else, through tears, through other secretions. So it is concerning because, for example, we don't have a universal blood testing system that would allow you to get clean blood in case that you were to require a blood transfusion.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
That's a huge one. I mean, imagine, God forbid, you get into a situation of trauma where you need to get some blood, and they give you the blood, and then you're cured from your trauma, but now, a year later, you're dealing with all these COVID-related or spike protein-related illnesses because they gave you a huge amount of spike that one human volunteer decided to give.
Well, we had a problem to a lesser degree years ago when we were getting contaminated HIV or hepatitis C, things in our blood supplies.
Yeah, and again, I expect that within the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to have a commercially available assay that will be able to look at different tissues and see if you have spike protein. And I think that it's not going to be until then that people are going to start believing it. Because right now, I can tell you, again, a lot of my colleagues, they don't believe in this. Until you don't show, even if you show them a clot this big that you got out of somebody that had either long COVID or vaccine-related injury that is full of spike, they say, oh, no, that's just on a lab. That's nothing. They don't believe it. They don't believe that. I've been censored by my own friends. I mean, I have people that you have seen some of my posts on Facebook, and in some of them, people say, shame on you. Shame on me for what? For telling the truth?
So is there a commercially available test to see if you've got spike in your blood?
No, but there is a commercially available way to see how many antibodies you have. And that's what we're using as a surrogate of what's going on. The other one, it's coming. I mean, we are working with 3 or 4 different companies that have developed some assays, and I'm test driving some of them on research basis to see if they pan out.
Can you tell the antibodies from the vax spike protein versus the COVID?
You can't. You cannot. So again, the only way by which I can tell is based on the number. The higher the number, the more likely it is related to the vaccine. And again, you need to understand that I have people that have received 9 boosters. And then they wonder why they're sick. They says, I was never sick before COVID. Well, welcome to your new life.
Why does vaccination tend to drive the level of spike? You were saying that you see higher levels, residuals.
Oh, because that spike, like I told you, in 1 out of every 800 people or so, the spike will take over your cells and will start producing more spike. And when you produce more spike, you produce more antibodies.
Okay. So that also can explain for people that might go, oh, you guys are crazy. I got my shot or I got my COVID and I'm fine now. Not everybody who gets the shot or everybody who gets COVID ends up having the same problems.
And that's the whole point. And that's the problem where I have the most problem. Because I cannot say that something is safe and effective when 1 out of 800 people are going to have with a long-term problem. Think about it. How many billion doses we have given of this? 1 in 800 is a lot of people. It's more than 50% of what I see in my office every single day. And how do I know that what we're doing is working? Because the patients tell you, you saved my life, you changed my life. I'm no longer, doomed to do anything. People that have vaccine-related injury, 8% of them, 8%, are bed-bound. They cannot even get out of their beds. This is a serious problem. This is a problem that we, as a world, not as a nation, as a world, we need to address. And to be honest with you, I do believe that if we find that there was foul play on this, those people who were involved in lying to us, they need to be criminally charged and tried.
Oh, I agree with you. Let's talk about medical, what is called medical literature or medical publications. And, I have done medical malpractice cases and toxic injury cases, and I've seen in those particular fields how special interests dominate the authoritative literature and suppress other viewpoints. One of the things that and there was a famous editor of the New England Journal of Medicine who at one point goes, we can't trust our own peer-reviewed journals anymore because the influence of big money and big pharma has gotten so pervasive. What's your experience with that?
So that you know, I have been the editor-in-chief of several journals throughout my life. During COVID, I think that I opened my eyes on looking at some of those issues that we are talking about. For example, there was a paper that was published in New England Journal that had to do with vaccines. It had, I believe, 26 authors. 20 out of the 26 authors were Pfizer employees. So, as an editor-in-chief of a journal, I said, how did this paper even go through? Because that's a conflict of interest. The other 6 people that were part of that paper were receiving grants or money or something from Pfizer. Now, when you know that Pfizer provides a substantial amount of the income of New England Journal of Medicine, you say this is a huge conflict of interest. And when I looked at that and started to look at other journals, it was very similar in other journals. So once the FLCC was formed, one of the first ideas that I had at the very early was, why don't we have our own journal? And in the last year, we actually started to publish our own journal, the Journal of Independent Medicine. It's a journal that is completely unbiased. You're going to say, Joe, there's no way that you can completely unbiased. Yes, it is. We don't take money from pharmaceutical industry, from any other corporations. Basically, it's a journal that we get funded by the own Independent Medical Alliance. I have a double-blinded peer review system. That means if I know that you're a great author and you send me a paper, maybe I will say, hey, he's a great author. I will not even look at it in detail and I will accept. But I make sure that doesn't happen. So if you send me a paper, we go through your paper, somebody that is completely unbiased, and erases anything that has your name, where you're located, nothing that can identify you. From there, I send it to the peer reviewers. The peer reviewers will review and will give me their honest opinion.
Wow.
And then I'll send it back to you for either review or whatever needs to be done. And you will not know who was the person that reviewed it for you.
Oh, I like that.
So that is, you cannot be more kosher than that. It's as 100%. All of our papers have a date of insertion. That means that they can be reached through Google and some of the things. And we're on the process of putting them through the different search indexing platforms that are out there. I know we're going to have a lot of issues in getting them in the National Library of Medicine and stuff like that. It's going to happen because, we do encourage people that have been rejected from other journals to send us their stuff. Because I know that a lot of good research is being blindsided. A lot of good research is being censored because of what it means. Where we have a special interest in repurposed drugs because they're inexpensive. So we have a lot of that. The first year we published 4 issues. Next year we're going to publish 6 issues, and in 2027 we're going to publish 12 issues. We have over 50 peer reviewers. All of them, have pretty much sworn that they're going to do this by the book, and everything is clean, and we keep records of everything. And the reason why I do that is because I know that people are going to come after us, just saying that, we are an illegitimate publication, because we're competing against the American Medical Association, we're competing against the New England Journal of Medicine, we're competing against Lancet, British Medical Journal. But my goal is that that's going to become a good journal where we can get good research being published.
What's the Brownstone?
So Brownstone is another organization that was funded, I believe, in 2021 as a result of all these things that were happening in the world. Jeffrey Tucker, one of his associates, incorporated this institute, which is a fascinating institute. It's like, I feel like I'm in the 1700s, and I'm hiding in some kind of a basement with several absolutely brilliant minds trying to come up with a way to fix the world. That's what Brownstone is for me. Now, Brownstone is very close to the Independent Medical Alliance, where we have a very good alliance, very good affiliation, and we actually share several of our fellows are members of the Brownstone Institute. The goal, one more time, is to educate. The education from Brownstone is not only medical. They do economics, they do a lot of other things. They also have frequent gatherings where all these, I call it brilliant minds, go. It is fascinating because every time I go there, I feel like I'm the most stupid person in the room, as you have brilliant people around.
I followed the history of medicine a bit, and not to any great detail, but a couple of things are curious. One, I follow vintage advertisements, and I collect vintage advertisements that have made, doctors recommending smoking is an obvious one. People know this, but little song and dance routines where little talking animals will be going, DDT is good for me, and those kinds of things. And I found these are not that far in the past. So you can look back into the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and still continues. It's an evolutionary process. And these things that were being sold as absolutely safe, wonderful, life-saving things end up, it's laughable. Because you look at it and you go, So I post these things up when people say, follow the science. I post some of this stuff going, well, science changes and it's not always right.
Yeah, and again, when you talk about those things, I usually post, I teach my students, I show them this picture of the journal Chest, 1956.
Yes.
A big doctor smoking, and it says, more doctors smoke Camel than any other cigarette. I mean, this is for pulmonary doctors, which is fine. Now, on what you were saying, it is fascinating how people say, follow the science. But to me, when I read that, to me sounds more follow the narrative. So what science are we truly following? And all of those doctors that says, this is, you guys are giving misinformation, you are doing this, you are doing that. No. I mean, a good scientist recognizes that science changes, and you have the right to change your mind. And I guess I'm the classic example. I started vaccinating people, and I changed my mind very quickly. Very, very quickly, because I saw what was going on. I didn't get stuck in I'm going to keep on vaccinating because everybody else is vaccinating, or because I'm going to have some kind of financial incentive. We need to start forgetting about, putting profits before patients. We need to change. And that's one of the things that we try to encourage people. Let's put patients before profits.
And stop punishing the doctors.
The problem is that the punishing the doctors goes with the narrative. I was called into the Texas Medical Board twice during the pandemic. Twice, not once, twice. Because I was using Ivermectin. And when they asked me in the medical board, why are you using Ivermectin? And that's obviously after like a year and a half of investigation, and they treat you like a criminal. I said, because it works. What do you mean it works? So I showed them our own data. I said, look, 4% mortality versus 40% mortality. What are you talking about? What are you telling me? I mean, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're not using remdesivir. No, I'm not using remdesivir. In all fairness, I tried remdesivir at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it didn't work. My patients died. So I'm a conscious individual that has the right to change his mind. And any true scientist should do that. And not to be afraid and come out and say, hey, I screwed up.
How many people are saying they screwed up?
No one. I mean, one, me. I mean, I can tell you, at least as far as vaccines go, I don't know too many doctors that have come and say that. I gave an interview in Univision regarding this same concept, and I said, I screwed up. You should read the comments. I mean, the comments were fabulous. It says, this doctor, he's probably going to be committing suicide very soon. So that people know I'm not planning to commit suicide. So if anything funky happens to me, it was not me.
It seems like in some ways we're still in the Middle Ages, where there's. Denise and I went to see one of our friends who's a doctor in Italy, and he took us on a tour of the University of Bologna. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever been there, it was just magnificent. This beautiful amphitheater where they teach students, and they were teaching surgery and things like this back hundreds and hundreds of years. Magnificent. And at the very edge of the amphitheater at the front was where they would do autopsies and things like that, right? And so you could see it from the whole amphitheater thing, what was going on. And he said, "Do you see that window up in the corner of this thing?" I go, "Yeah, I can see that window." He said, "Well, that's where the Catholic Church in those days would send their spies to see if we were doing anything we weren't supposed to do." Okay, and so there were students appointed to go take a look to make sure the spies, they'd spot the spies, right? If they spotted the spies, the operating table that they were doing these cadavers on, it had a foot pedal below it, and so they would push the foot pedal, and the table would open up, and it would drop the body down into the river below. Seal it back up. That was the game they were playing then, because if you got caught, they had negotiated with the Catholic Church. We're only going to do this, we're only going to do that, and only on certain days. But the doctors wanted to find out what's going on.
But that hasn't changed, and and the good doctors haven't changed also. There were a lot of associates and friends that I have that during the COVID pandemic, they would start giving you fake vaccination cards so that you could have a normal life, or you could continue your life, or that they would get rid of the vaccines, the injections per se, and throw them away. Now, one thing that we know, and about history, is that unfortunately, the human being is the only animal that makes the same mistake twice. And we're doomed to have these problems over and over again, especially when we have all this oversight, whether it's economical interest, whether it's big pharma, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's, somebody's always going to be looking at you. In these days and age, with, social media, with all these other things, they're having much more difficulty controlling us because there are so many outlets, and truth is going to spread faster than fear. So the more we can do, the more we can educate, we'll be able to help.
How long do you keep doing this?
Until the day I die. That's my goal. I mean, I'm going to keep on fighting.
How often do you sleep?
I sleep between 2 and 3 hours per night when I'm lucky, including last night.
How do you do it?
Years of education, training, and experience. I mean, you get used to it. I mean, it's I love what I do, and my mind, it goes at 1,000,000%. I mean, I don't stay still.
What do you do in your spare time?
I write. I write as much as I can. I love to write. It's one of the things that I enjoy. I play racquetball. That's my to-go for sport. And I spend time with my grandkids, which you have seen on Facebook because I love to post them every time I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. Is there anything else you want to talk about or say?
No, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to your audience. And if you guys need anything, please reach out. Again, we have a beautiful website that has a lot of useful information at www.imahealth.org.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Been an honor to talk to you.
Thanks.